Years ago, I was operating the old airport at Manassas, Virginia, and a young fellow in high school came to me, and his name was Ken Hyde, and he wanted to know if he could go to work for me, and I hired him and taught him to fly and taught him aircraft mechanics.
Well, I met Charlie Culp when I was working in the A&P store in Manassas, and he was operating the old Manassas airport at the time. And I made sure if I saw him come in the store that I would relieve the checker line that he was in so I could get to talk to this pilot, you know. And every time he'd come in, we'd talk about I wanted to learn to fly. And I asked him how many hours. He said, it was about 8 hours, you know, $10 an hour, something like that. So next time he'd come in, I'd get more information. And I finally just told him I couldn't get $80 together to do that. And he said, why don't you come out and take a half an hour lesson? And I didn't know you could do that. So for $5, I went out and started taking lessons with him. And he asked me, he said, do you have any interest in maintenance and that sort of thing? And I said, yeah. He said, well, how about if you came to work with me at the old Manassas airport here, and I'll teach you to fly, and you'll have an airplane to fly when you want to, and you can get your mechanics license, your aircraft and power plant. So that's what I did. And the manager of the A&P store was a really, really nice guy. And I told him what I was going to do, and he says, you know, someday you'll have an A&P store of your own, you know. And he said, you don't want to go out there in the bushes with that stranger. Anyway, he gave me a job at night stocking shelves so that I could still have some income. But I went to work for Charlie Culp.
Well, years later, he became an American airline captain, and he got this idea for the flying circus while he was still flying for the airlines.
Well, Cole Palin was a good friend, and I had traded Cole some Lerone parts that I thought I would never ever use, World War I rotary engine parts. And he had such a good operation, and we had airplanes on this field and hangars up on the road. Sam Cooper's family had a private strip here. And so we talked about the antique airplanes we had and how nice it would be if we had our own air show like Cole Palin and so forth. So Congressman Stan Paris had a Stearman here. And so I talked him into going up and seeing one of Cole Palin's show on a Sunday. And he decided that, yeah, it would be a good idea if we did something like that in the Warrenton area. So we asked Cole what he thought, would that be any problem? And he said, no. He said, I'd be glad to help you do it, you know. And that was the beginning of it. And that had to be early 1970 or may have been late 69. You know, I'm not exactly sure. My logbook shows that I flew a couple of the airplanes here because we didn't have hangars down there. The Beachy Little Looper and the reproduction Newport 24, and we're flown right off of the strip, running along the road, there, the highway there. So I don't see a grand opening date, but it had to be in late 1970 or 71. We acquired a number of airplanes and built the hangars, and it started the flying circus, basically.
And he came to me and asked me if I would like to come and maintain these old airplanes that they were buying. They were replicas of World War I, and kind of run the base there. And I told him, I said, yeah. I said, but tell me more about it. I said, I would like to be a part of it. And I said, do you have any stock left to sell? And he said, he thought they could find me some stock, so he talked to his people, and then so I joined the Flying Circus as a stockholder, but also I was given a little stipend to assemble all the airplanes and get everything ready for flying, and then become the airport curator there for the show. The triplane came out of Ohio. The Sopwith Camel, the Rumpel, the B-2Cs, the B-2C came out of England. They had been built for a movie that never was developed. And our little Cub came out of New England, and the Eindecker came from Texas. And we just got them all over. The Newport was built in Georgia, but we picked it up at the big air show in Oshkosh. It was in the museum out there. And we got all those airplanes that came in, and most of them needed assembling, so I assembled the airplanes and test flew them. And that's about how I got involved with it.
Most of the guys that joined the Flying Circus group were guys that already had Stearmans and Gypsy Moths and biplanes and Cubs and that sort of thing. So we didn't have to buy those airplanes for the public, but we did buy the unusual ones like the Beachy Little Looper and the Newport 24, and because it was basically a World War I theme. And everything that comes from England has a Gypsy Major engine in it, which is, it's a good engine, but it's not a Stearman, you know. But they worked out well for what we got. And if that film, the film that they built it for, When Beagle Come Marching Home was the title, didn't happen. And so we were fortunate enough to buy that collection of airplanes, which helped a lot.
The first 2 years, the Flying Circus itself owned airplanes. They owned these airplanes that I just mentioned, but then some of the guys owned their own airplanes that were built in the 30s and 40s. And through assembling and flying some of the airplanes. One of the airplanes was built in Wisconsin. It was a replica of a 1911 airplane. And so anyway, to get started, we all kind of tried out to see who could fly what and what they could, how could they do. So I flew the 1911 airplane, and they gave me the job to fly that in the show. And I flew the Sopwith Camel, and so I got to fly that in the show. And a lot of these people were airline captains and everything else, and we'd all been together there for a few months. And I remember when I flew the little 1911 airplane, one of the captains came up to me and he says, "I didn't know you could fly." And I said, "Well, damn it, you hired me." I said, you should have known what I could do." So I got the job then of flying a couple of the airplanes in the show. And but anyway, that was how I got introduced. And there was 16 other people. I was the 17th involved. And we all signed a $100,000 note to buy these airplanes and to buy the field, and got started. originally, the beginnings of the Flying Circus was 17 people, and I keep their names. I know who they are. And Nicky Arundel, who was a great person in Warrenton, Virginia. He owned the newspapers and a lot of stuff up there. These are the people who were our first members. And then Ken Hyde, he was the American airline captain. Stan Parrish, he was congressman. And Don Dillman, Eastern Airlines. Don McClure was Eastern Airlines. And Dick Anger was Eastern Airlines. And then myself and John Verzell, he was a pastor in Northern Virginia. And Charlie Pearson was an architect. And Lou Davis, he was our publicity man, but he was a pilot. And Doug Newhouse was a United pilot. Bill Barnes was an Eastern pilot. And Johnny Richards was in the gun business and stuff in Alexandria. And Doug Hazel, he was a big electrician in Warrenton. He had his own biplane. And Sam Cooper was a member, and Noah Moore was a United captain. And Bert Brooks learned to fly gliders. The first day we opened, it had rained before, and we had the field there was no grass on it. The grass hadn't grown yet, and we had a mess out there. The cars, you wouldn't believe, there was thousands of people. And we had the governor there to cut the ribbon for the show. And so we couldn't park cars on the place. It was too wet. We parked a few. So we had to immediately, we had a neighboring farmer that let us use his property, which was not as muddy as ours. And I remember this state trooper came in his car, and I saw him coming towards me, and he took his hand up and pushed his hat on the back of his head, and he says, "You know, y'all have a hell of a mess out here on the highway." And I said, we had back cars up on 17, Route 17, to where it was bad. And I said, "I hope you can help us." Anyway, he was a nice trooper. And so we had the farmer had a tractor and a couple of wagons, and Boots Ritchie, who was our farmer neighbor, he was just as nice to us as he could be, and he used his wagons to haul the people from his farm over to the Flying Circus so we could get the show going. It was an unbelievable mess, but we packed them all in there. We didn't fly these airplanes much because we had very little practice. We just flew them a couple of times, and we never practiced in the airplanes. What we were doing, we pretty much learned in the show. And they were company-owned airplanes, and the way a lot of them were, you know, one of them had a 1910 engine in it, 1911. And so we didn't put a lot of flying time on them. We only used them in the show. Now some of the guys owned their own older airplanes or biplanes and things like that filled in the show to complete it. But the company-owned airplanes, we never flew them. Well, the company, I'd say company, but it was the Flying Circus Aerodrome is what we named our outfit, the Flying Circus Aerodrome, and we bought a little over 200 acres of land out there, and that's what we all tried out flying a couple of the airplanes in the beginning, and we just mutually among us agreed who would fly what airplane, and then, you know, as the years went on, that's the way we operated, that if you wanted to be in the show, you demonstrated to all of us what you could do, and then if we liked it, then you showed the FAA what you could do, which was the Federal Aviation Agency. The government oversaw all air shows. In fact, almost every air show we had out there, the government would be on the field supervising us. So that's the way that worked. And so you were approved to fly by the members of the Flying Circus, and then you got approved. If we thought that was good, then the FAA would look at you, and then you could be in the show. What we did, we just tried to show people we all wore World War I uniforms, and a lot of the women in our snack bar, they wore nurses' uniforms. Everybody in the show, on the show side of the field, had clothing of the period. And what we liked about the field is when you were in the bleacher part of the field, when you watched the show, you could not see any other buildings, no farms, no nothing. You were looking straight out, and you were looking at replicas of World War I and people flying them in German, British, American uniforms. And it was quite educational, and it really set you back in time. And we played music of the period, and it was a pretty nice thing for a bunch of guys like us that just got together and didn't know what the hell they were doing. Well, we all knew how to fly, but that's about it. In time, and you know, we were paying off a note on the airplanes, and we were getting ready to make a move to buy the land, and we realized that we couldn't do all of this at one time, and to own a replica World War I airplane, which a lot of them were just single-seat airplanes, nobody wanted to own a single-place airplane. So we decided to move, after 2 years, to move our period up to the 30s, the Barnstorming era, which was after World War II, and then those airplanes were pretty functional. So then we had people that would be interested in owning one of them, and so we said, okay, each person buy his own airplane if he wants to fly in the show, and demonstrate to us what he can do to make a movie of the 30s. I mean, not a movie, but a show. And so at that time, after 2 years, we sold all of the airplanes that we had. Now this created a problem because a lot of our people were really purists, and they really loved World War I. And so about half of our group decided to quit.
And when the Flying Circus was changed as a foundation type thing. The World War I theme kind of drifted away because everyone owned a World War II type biplane at least. And it made more sense because at least they could hop passengers in those type airplanes where they couldn't in the World War I. So it was a way to keep the operation and keep the money flowing, and they did a good job with it because it's still a treat, you know.
So we then found out that a lot of people already owned 30s airplanes, and a lot more people would like to buy one because if you had a reason to fly it and a place to fly it, that made it great. So then we really started getting in a lot of members, and we were getting thicker and thicker on the act, so everybody didn't have to be there. See, the first 2 years, we had to be there almost every Sunday, every single Sunday. And, you know, people with families, they got old after a little bit, especially if you were just volunteering. And that's what it was all about. So anyway, that kind of tells that story. And then after 2 years, the company stopped owning airplanes, and then we were able to start purchasing the land. And then we finally paid the farm off in 1990, and I stayed as their curator and mechanic and do-it-yourself, whatever, up until 1990. And then I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something else, and so I resigned from being airport manager and curator. After we sold the old airplanes, I didn't have an airplane, so I bought an airplane to teach my 2 boys to fly at the Flying Circus. And what I had did is I tried out to be a comedy act in the 1930s show.
Buzzing around over the trees for 5 minutes, and then we'll have more formation flying and aerobatics and all kinds of wonderful things taking place. And I see that we've got Silas over here. Silas lives right down the back road. That's why you probably never seen him around, but let me just come over and shake his hand. Hello, Silas. I know that this is a day you look forward to for a long, long time. You got any words for us? No words at all. You're speechless. Well, Silas, there's the J3 Club that you've wanted to ride in for so long. We're going to get you a little ride, take you up, fly around. People are going to grab a hamburger or a Coke or whatever, or just sit tight and talk to each other. And once we get you back down on the ground, the air show will continue. So we want you to have a wonderful time. Okay? This is your moment. You know that you have earned it. I mean, you put in many, many, many hours here to fly. Here comes the airplane. Who's flying today? Who's in that aircraft? That's Mark Menifee in the airplane. Mark is the grandson of a very famous pilot named Bill Menifee, a United captain, and a wonderful old friend who left before his time, once upon a time, long ago. Well, this is an old airplane. It's got rivets. No, don't do that. You don't want to do that. It's delicate. It's old. It's, you know, but I mean, it's old. But I mean, what can I say? It's like it's got dimples in it. Now, if you'll just walk around the airplane here, Silas. Come on over this way, okay? Watch the rudder, and we'll. Silas, what are you doing? Come on. Silas, don't break it.
Get off that airplane!
Come on, Silas, you can't do that.
Get off that airplane!
Yeah, thinks it's a mule, yeah. You're just scatting around. Has he been drinking? You haven't been drinking that? No? Now look, get in the airplane. We're going to take you out. 5 minutes is all we ask. This guy's, he thinks he's the clown act. He thinks he's having fun here today. Well, we'll get him up and around. And as soon as we do, then we'll get the show on again. Okay, Pilot's going to taxi not. Mark says, wait a minute. Ho! Stop it. Tell Mark to stop. That tail wheel doesn't look right. Hold it. I don't know whether he heard something or not. Mark! Hang on just a minute. Hang on. I think we got a problem back here. We're going to take a look at it. It looks to me like the tail wheel might be bent or broken. You want to taxi this a little bit? Let's see how it goes. I'll walk along with you. Mark, it's still wobbling. Mark, it's wobbling. Mark! Hold it. Tell him to stop. Mark, one thing we got here, a lot of airplanes around here. We can do this after the return. This guy Silas won't mind. He won't mind. No, the tail wheel, look. It's obviously broken. Look at it, it's wobbling all over the place. What are you doing out of the airplane? Why are you out of the airplane? Hey! Stop! Silence! Oh, for Pete's sake! These guys are wasting engines are showing us a silence! Oh, Silas! You silly goof! Holy smoke! I thought he was going to crash on takeoff there. Hey, what? You're clueless! I mean, what's the deal? There's no pilot in that airplane, only Silas Hicks. What gives? Is the radio on? He can't fly! This is his first flight! You have a radio on or something? He's got a receiver. He might be able to say something. Hey, Tower, can you switch us to this? We'll see if we can't talk to John. What do you suggest we do? Picture up, please get your airplane back. You're never supposed to. Oh my gosh, pull back! Oh. Now, listen, Silas, if you can hear me, we're going to try to get you back down on the ground, and then we'll continue with the show. Back to the left and back to the right, and if you push the rudder as you're doing now, well, you're going to turn to the left, but you can't do a flat turn in an airplane like that. That's good. Ease in a little stick. When you push a little rudder, push a little stick. Ease the stick around to the left. Now, you're getting a little slow. You're getting a little slow. Okay, look, Silas, we want you to the airplane around very gently. We want you to land back into the wind. Hear me, and you can see the direction in which the flags are. No, Silas, now you're crossing it up. Silas, you're going to fall down. Now, Silas, listen. What to do is ease the airplane back around. I want you to get a feel for the sticks, get a feel for the rudders. If you pull back on the stick, the airplane's nose will go up, and the airplane will slow. There you go with another one of those flat turns. No, that's okay. Silas, look down the runway. No jig and job. No, don't kick the rudder pedals like that, Silas. You're going to have a big problem with that. No, Silas, oh, look. You got it. You got a wheel down. Silas, don't push forward on the throttle. Not the throttle. No, you were almost back home. Oh my gosh! Boys and girls, what are we going to do with this man? He's back up in the sky again and he can't fly the airplane! Heavens to Murgatroyd! Alright, now listen, Silas. I'm not fooling around. You apparently know more than we think you know, but I don't know if you know enough about landing the airplane to get by with it and putting it on the ground in one piece. A little bit of stick, you're climbing at a radical angle. I don't want you to climb like that. I want you to, Silas, you pull back on the throttle. You've got to kick the opposite rudder. Neutralize the stick. Pull back on the stick. No, Silas, you're diving now. Ease it back. Pull it back. Not that far back, Silas. You can't fly it sideways either, so don't do that, please. Oh, now, Silas, enough of this fooling around. We're going to get you back down on the ground, and we're going to have a nice little talk. Hey, maybe I can induce you down. How does the word hold something like that, eh? Can we lure you back? Look at the way the flags are blowing. You can see which way the wind is. Okay, you're lining up with the runway over there by the trees. You're going to get some gustiness coming across the trees. But if you line it up, no, not a sashay. Easy does it. Now you're pushing left rudder, right rudder, left rudder, right rudder. strutting along like a floozy on Friday afternoon in Philadelphia. No, 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 no. Nice and easy does it. Just ease it around. We're going to get you. We want you to land in the direction opposite the flags. You see how the flags are blowing? If you look down over here, you'll see the flags. They're all blowing on a diagonal to the runway you were just flying over. So we'd like to line you up with the flags and have you come in on what we call our little costume runway right over here. So you're going to have the white tent on your left, and you're going to be looking at the tree. Okay? No, you're kind of skidding me. That's it. You want to get it around to the right. Good. No. You're over-controlling the airplane. You're pushing too much rudder. You don't want to push rudder. Easy does it. Watch the tent. I said beside the tent, not over the tent. Now, ease it around. Kick a little left rudder. You got a wheel down. Get another wheel down. You got two wheels down. Get the tail wheel down and you're landing. Get that tail wheel down. Hold that airplane! Somebody get that guy out of here! Where's the police? Stop that man! Stop that man! Stop that man! Oh, brother. Now I know why I'm not out there any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, is a man who's famous all over the country, noted as one of the last of the great barnstormers, if not the last barnstormer. A man who's flown everywhere in that J-3 Cub. His real name is Charlie Culp. He uses the name Silas Hicks because that's who he borrowed these coveralls from 35 years ago when you started.
Well, we have various acts.
The first few times I didn't have my steps quite right, and at one point I had to look around to Dad and say, please throttle back, because I was sure that if I moved my one foot I would lose my support and be blown back, and he wasn't able to throttle back but was able to put his hand out behind my back, and when I felt that behind me I knew that I was safe. I could lift that leg and get back into the airplane.
That is the hardest part, getting out of the cockpit, because you have this prop blast. It's equivalent to, let's say, about 150 miles an hour. So she has to get out through that. I do try to throttle back to lessen that blast, but there's a requirement that we have to climb as she's doing this, and I need the power. So we have to sort of balance one and the other out.
It's quite frightening, but it's extremely thrilling. It's the ride of a lifetime. You know, there's not too many people that will ever experience that. I think we're all, very safety conscious out here and aren't going to do anything that would cause any harm to us or anyone else.
We hope to be here another 15 years doing the same thing.
What's your name? Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed the flying. I'm glad. So
That was a great show.
Kids over here now, I say kids, 20, 19, 20, 21 years of age, boys and girls, men and women, who are now CFIs, tail dragger pilots, and, destined to become airline captains or military pilots and so on, because they cut their teeth here at the Flying Circus. It makes them better.
And I heard my mother say to my father, she says, when did we ever hear music last like that again? He'd never been up in an airplane in his life, and I had taken her for one ride, and she wouldn't go anymore because he wouldn't go. And but they walked away from there with the music. So everybody gets something. And there may be some people that get something from the whole show. But there are other people get something from 2 things in the show, 3 things in the show, 4 things in the show. There is something different that you're going to hit somebody. There is so many different kind of things going on. And, you know, a lot of times we have old cars out there. Well, somebody that came along with somebody that didn't give a damn for an airplane likes old cars. Like a 3-ring circus, everybody walks away with something, but most of all, nostalgia. And nostalgia has kept me alive all my life.